And I'm going to make it really easy because chemistry is not my favourite subject, but understanding the basic structure of fats helps us to understand how the body uses it, where the body uses it, and why the body uses it. Proverbs 14 verse 6 says, "Knowledge is easy to him that understands." So my aim is to give you a understanding of the basic structure of the fats, and then you have a knowledge on what the body uses oils for, which oils, and where. So we're going to begin with flaxseed. Flaxseed and chia are the highest sources of an essential fatty acid called omega-3. You've heard of omega-3? What are we told is the highest source of omega-3? Fish. Well, no creature can put omega-3 into their fatty acid chain, only plants can. So why are fish high? Because they eat a one-celled algae that is high. So we can do superior to eating fish to get our omega-3. We can get it by eating the flaxseed or the chia seed. And an easy way to do it is to grind up the flaxseed and just pour it on your fruit in the morning. There is a use for your coffee grinder, and that is to grind up the flaxseed. So what I want to show you now is what this 3 means. So the flaxseed and the chia, they have an 18-chain fatty acid, which means there's 18 chains. And there's 19 trillion in one drop of oil. That's the magnification we're looking at. And notice that either side of this fatty acid chain, there are hydrogen atoms. And right in the middle, they're all joined together by a carbon atom. And at the third carbon atom, that's what the 3 means. At the third carbon atom, so that's 1, 2, 3, there's a double bond. Double bond means instead of 1 link, there's 2 links. And whenever you get 2 links, these hydrogen atoms go, and these hydrogen atoms underneath develop an electromagnetic field between them and start repelling each other. And that causes a kink in the chain. And in the flaxseed and chia, there are 3 double bonds. So that's 1, 2, 3, another one there, 1, 2, 3, and another one there. These hydrogen atoms are gone, these are gone, but underneath there's the repelling action, and what that means is that this oil is a very thin oil because it's got 3 kinks in it. So this oil is called a polyunsaturated. Poly means more than 1 double bond. Unsaturated because there's 3 empty spots on the fatty acid chain. So I'd like to have a look at the effect of double bonds in the body. And this also explains why it is such an amazing oil. What's the effect of double bonds? When we eat this oil, it creates an electromagnetic field. So this electromagnetic field is what's created when these 3 repel each other. And that's important because we are electrical people. There's a spark of electricity in every cell. So this omega-3 is very good for our brain because that's the most concentration of our electrical system, which is our nerve cells. And I think God's got a sense of humour because the nut that looks like the brain is the highest source in the nut kingdom for the omega-3, which of course is walnut. Double bonds are heat sensitive, which means when we're eating nice amounts of these omega-3 rich foods, we're able to manage our heat better. These double bonds are light sensitive, which means we actually are more efficient at absorbing vitamin D. And these double bonds act like a magnet to oxygen. Oxygen, it's the most vital element needed for life. What an amazing oil. But if that seed is broken open and it sits on the bench for more than an hour, the light, heat and oxygen are attracted into those empty spots and the oil's destroyed. So it's a very volatile oil. That's why if you grind it up, use it straight away or put it in an airtight container and freeze it. So don't go into the health food shop and buy it already ground, because it's no good. What's sunflower? Sunflower is high in omega-6. What does the 6 refer to? It refers to the position of the first double bond on this 18-chain fatty acids. It's also what's called a long-chain fatty acid. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's the first double bond, and there are 2 double bonds in sunflower. So two double bonds means that there are 2 repelling actions. 1, 2, 3, another one there, another repelling action there. Hydrogen atoms along here, along here, along here, and along here. So this oil has 2 kinks. So it's not as thin an oil, but it is still quite a thin oil. And it's also called a polyunsaturated fatty acid. Poly meaning more than 1 double bond. Unsaturated because there are some empty spots on the fatty acid chain. What about almond and olive? They are also an 18-chain fatty acid, and they are high in omega-9, 9 indicating the position on the fatty acid chain of the first double bond. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there it is there. And it only has 1 double bond in it. So there's 1 repelling action here, which means 1 kink, and I think we can all appreciate olive oil is quite a thick oil, because there's only 1 double bond. So this oil is called a monounsaturated fatty acid. Mono because there's only 1 double bond. Unsaturated because there is still an empty spot on the fatty acid chain. What about coconut? Coconut does not contain these long chain fatty acids. It contains short and medium chain fatty acids. So the medium chain would be 16, 14, 12. The short chains would be 6, 8, 10, and I've drawn a short chain there. And there are no double bonds in the coconut, so every spot is full. And so, especially in the cold weather, it's solid, so it's called a saturated fat. So then the question arises, which is the best oil? Well, which body function are you talking about? Because the body uses them all. The body loves using the omega-3 and 6 for cell membrane function and repair because it's such a fluid oil. Loves using it for our brain because it's such an electrical system. The synapse between nerve cells is ensured with this amazing oil because it's such a thin oil. This explains why the British, they paint their cricket bats with linseed oil, which is basically flaxseed oil, because it disperses so easy. And because it's such a thin oil and disperses easy, it's very good at keeping the blood nice and thin. In fact, it is even said to help disperse tumours. But I'd like to give you the omega-3 story. So the omega-3 that is found in flaxseed, chia seed, is called alpha-linolenic acid. Alpha-linolenic acid has 3 double bonds. So that's 1, 2, 3. In the body, ALA is converted to EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, and EPA has 5 double bonds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in the body, EPA is converted to DHA, decohexaonic acid, and DHA has 6 double bonds. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a very thin oil, and the body loves burning the DHA for cell membrane function and repair. As you can see, why it's such a thin oil. Gives a beautiful suppleness to every cell membrane. The fish eats the one-celled algae and gets ALA. And in the fish, ALA is converted to EPA. In the fish, EPA is converted to DHA. Man extracts DHA, puts it into capsules and says, oh, this is much better for you. Because the DHA is already available. But if 3 double bonds are sensitive to heat, light and oxygen, how sensitive are the 6? Can they extract it without any exposure to heat, light and oxygen? I question. And the fish that are the highest in DHA are the highest in mercury and dioxin. There's hardly a healthy fish today. We've got a creek, we're way up in the mountains, and then we hear the neighbours using Roundup, glyphosate to kill the Parramatta grass that goes into the water. Even those fish are probably contaminated. So, knowing that, I believe it's far better to get our omega-3 from grinding up the flaxseed, using the chia seed. But the ALA converting to the EPA, converting to the DHA is inhibited if the person's dehydrated, if the person's having too many stimulants. And so some naturopath says, well, they're not going to stop their coffee, they're not going to eat well, so just give them the DHA. But I believe when people realise what certain things are doing to their body, they can make intelligent decisions to say, actually, I'm going to start drinking more water. Actually, I'm going to start giving my body the conditions so that I can experience optimum health. So again, what is the best oil? Which body function are you referring to? The body loves burning saturated fat as fuel. So let me show you. We looked at it briefly yesterday, and do you remember we looked at the mouth and where the different oils were broken down, and I know that I am guilty of information overload. So I'll just give a quick recap on how the different oils are broken down in the body. Lining the duodenum, a little villi. Let's magnify the villi. And up the middle of the villi is the lacteal, and all through the villi is the blood capillary network. And the 3 long-chain fatty acids, they're not broken down in the mouth, they're not broken down in the stomach. It's not until they get to the duodenum. Remember, the bile from the liver emulsifies it, pancreatic lipase further breaks it down, and then those long-chain fatty acids are absorbed straight into the lacteal, into the lymphatic system. Taken to the thymus, then to the liver, and the liver stores them because the surgeons have arrived. But not the coconut. The coconut is totally unique. Underneath the tongue, there are sublingual glands, and those sublingual glands release lingual lipase, and lingual lipase breaks down saturated fat. So when the saturated fat gets into the stomach, the breakdown's already happening. Does not need bile, does not need pancreatic lipase, gets absorbed out of the gut, straight into the blood, taken to the liver, burnt as fuel. What an amazing oil. So rather than being public enemy number 1, coconut oil is actually a remarkable oil. And if someone has liver or pancreatic problems, what would be the best oil for them? The coconut, because the breakdown already begins in the mouth. Now here's a little bit of homework for you. Next time you're in the big supermarket, go to where they have baby formulas and have a look at the baby formulas. And in every baby formula, you'll find saturated fat. You'll find palm oil or coconut oil. Why? because it is the easiest on the baby's digestive system because the breakdown begins in the mouth. So it's the easiest for the baby to break down as the baby's liver and pancreas are still developing. Do you know the highest cholesterol content found in any food is breast milk? And no baby has a heart attack. Anyway, because cholesterol does not cause heart disease. I was speaking to a midwife. She was in her 80s and she'd been in Africa for 40 years. She said at one point the African babies weren't developing properly. And when they investigated, they found that the mothers, and unfortunately the milk companies are allowed, the baby formula companies are allowed to go into Africa and sell these milk powders. It's just criminal what they're doing. Whereas if the mothers would breastfeed, it's the best milk. Even if they're suffering from malnutrition, the baby is still going to get the cream. But because they're so poor, they're watering down the powdered milk. So the babies were not getting enough fat and their brains weren't developing. So that rich food, that rich high cholesterol food in the mother's milk is vital for that developing brain. Let's go to the other end of the scale. Let's go to the latter years. Do you know, we're finding Alzheimer's in Australia, 1,700 cases being diagnosed every week. And yet there's no mention of it in the Bible. Over 100 years ago, it was hardly known. And it seems to have come about the time of this fat-free push. Ancel Keys in 1953 was the researcher in Minneapolis who put forth this theory. Notice what I said, theory, that's what it is. It's a theory that fat causes heart disease. In his book, Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, he's a cardiovascular surgeon, British. His book's called The Great Cholesterol Con. He says, I'm still waiting for the proof that cholesterol fat, that saturated fat, cholesterol cause heart disease. Yeah. He quotes Ancel Keys as saying, we're pretty sure the proof will come. Is that science? And yet the whole world has been taken in by this theory. Put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help, because it's not the fat. Now, I believe that's one contributing factor, is elderly people, from fear they don't want to die of a heart attack, so they stop the fat. So I'd like to have a look at what medicine has done to try and reduce the number one killer in the world today and for the last 20 years, which is heart disease. So let's have a look at what they've done. They've actually got everyone to go on fat-free, is that right? Fat-free, low-fat. Okay, I've got a question to you. Has it worked? It's still the number one killer. They told everyone to stop butter and eat margarine. Has that worked? No, but what has certainly raised up to be almost neck to neck on equal with heart disease is cancer. So I'd like to show you how they make margarine. Let's say they're going to make margarine out of flaxseed. They've got a problem, it's liquid. So what they do is they saturate this fatty acid chain with hydrogen atoms, and what that does is that causes this hydrogen atom to flick over to the other side, and what that does is that takes away the double bond. So now the oil is solid. Now that structure that I've just drawn there is not known in nature. It's very similar to the structure of plastic. So if you're going to eat margarine, you should eat the plastic container it comes in. I've never eaten it because I was brought up on butter, and the taste can't even compare, can it? No. And by the way, people have been eating butter for centuries and it didn't cause heart disease. So when did the heart disease begin? If you have a look at the history, it all started around the Industrial Revolution. You see, in the Industrial Revolution, yes, not only did they create a lot of chemicals, cleaning products, and by the way, we had a pest control guy do our program. I said to him, is it true that women can buy in the supermarket to clean their kitchens and to kill cockroaches that you are not allowed to use? He said yes. What's banned for the pest control guys can still be bought in the supermarket. If you look in my laundry cupboard, you'll find white vinegar and sodium bicarbonate. Got that? Cheap. And it's not hurting me. Oh, and a little bottle of eucalyptus oil, of course, to give it a nice scent, and some biodegradable washing detergent, which is not hard to get. So these chemicals began in the Industrial Revolution, and as we looked at last night, the chemical fabrics, which were created in a chemical laboratory, polyester, nylon and acrylic. But something else they did was they developed high heat and chemical equipment to extract oil out of hard seeds. You see, traditionally, if you have a look at the planet, here's the planet, what oils traditionally were eaten in the tropics? The coconut. And it's perfectly designed for this area because coconut oil is heat resistant, light resistant, and oxygen resistant. Perfect for the environment, and it's antifungal. If we go up the planet, we come to the Mediterranean, and what foods are grown in the Mediterranean? Your olive and your almond, so there's omega-9. And if you go further up the planet, you'll find omega-6, and right up the top of the planet, we'll find omega-3. And those oils are perfectly designed for the body's needs in that climate. Udo Erasmus, who wrote the book Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill, he talks of a study where they looked at a plant grown in the Mediterranean. It's high in omega-9. Same species of plant grown further up, higher in omega-6. Same species of plant grown up the top, high in omega-3. And he gives a story of a man who went to live with the Eskimos, but he took the SAD diet. What's the SAD diet? Standard American diet, which is almost totally deficient in those omegas. And within 2 months, the man was depressed and getting suicidal. You see, these oils are used by the brain. And there's a disease sweeping the northern countries called the SAD disease. It's seasonal affective disorder. And the SAD disease is caused by the SAD diet. People are not eating their traditional foods anymore, which were high in these omegas. So if we look at the planet, it's not hard to determine what is the best food to eat in that area. Now we'll go back to the Industrial Revolution. Before the Industrial Revolution, depending on where you lived, it was in the Mediterranean, you ate olive oil. If it was in the tropics, you ate coconut oil. And they're the two oils that are extracted from the flesh of the plant. So coconut's extracted from the flesh of the coconut, so women could make it in their kitchens. The olive oil is the other oil that's extracted from the flesh of the olive. Women had wooden presses, and they could even extract that in their kitchens. And then if you come further up the planet, I've heard of women in northern countries grinding the sunflower. Because it's a soft seed, they're able to grind it and squeeze it and get the sunflower oil out. And you see, these oils are less sensitive to light, heat and oxygen than the omega-3s. And if the person lived up the top, most of the fat came from cows, isn't that true? But those cows were organic, those cows, it was raw. As you saw in our last lecture, environmental poisons are stored in the fats, so unfortunately a lot of butter today is unsafe because a lot of the cows are exposed to chemicals. They're eating grass that was sprayed with DDT a few years ago. They're given a lot of antibiotics, and a lot of the chemicals are stored in the fat. But 100 years ago, that's what they ate. And if it's right up the top, what were they eating? They were eating fish, seal, whale blubber, which was very high in omega-3. But with the Industrial Revolution, then man was able to extract oil from hard seeds. And if you go into the supermarket today, it's the cheapest oil. It's in clear plastic bottles: canola oil, safflower oil, corn oil, peanut oil. Don't touch them. The best oils are the coconut oil and the olive oil. And if you buy olive oil, it should be first cold pressed in a dark glass or tin, because it still does have one double bond. So when I make a dish, I put the oil in at the end so that it is still in its fairly raw state. So has that helped, getting oils like that? Because what we were told saturated fats causing heart disease, which by the way has never been proved. Everyone was told to eat polyunsaturated oils, is that right? But they're the worst oils, because when you extract oil from the hard seed using heat, what happens to all the double bonds? They're all destroyed. So now you're eating a destroyed oil. Actually, yes, it's carcinogenic, but it also can damage the walls of the artery. The little endothelium cells that line the arterial wall can be damaged with these damaged oils. What else has medicine done to try and reduce heart disease? Number 2, put everyone on Cartier or aspirin, over the age of 50, blood thinner. So Cartier or aspirin, which is the most common one. I said to one lady who was on half an aspirin a day, I said, "You could stop that." She said, "I cannot." I said, "Why not?" She said, "The doctor said I will die." I'm sorry, but for too long we've put too much trust in them. I'm not against doctors. There are some excellent doctors out there, and some excellent painters, and some excellent builders, and some excellent plumbers. Is that right? In fact, Kathy, the lady you were taken with, she told me about her first builder, hopeless. And then she found a local guy from up here. He's built her a beautiful wooden house. He's a good one. So it's a matter of finding a good one. But I believe that doctors put too much trust in the pharmaceutical company. They should not trust those princes. So the side effect of aspirin, let me give it to you. Cartier is another name for it. Stomach bleed, eye bleed, and brain bleed. Number 1 cause of stomach ulcer, also causing deterioration of eyesight, also brain bleeds contributing to Alzheimer's. If you stop it, you will not die. It's not true. Number 3, everyone that has a heart attack, what do they put on? Statin drugs? Statin drugs are cholesterol-lowering medication. Has that helped? Has any of this helped? Not at all. Not at all. And what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done and expect different results. In fact, what you'll notice, if someone has a heart attack, there's a protocol. Or if they have a stroke, there's a protocol. They're put on blood thinner, cholesterol-lowering medication, and blood pressure medication. No matter who you are, no matter what your age, no matter what your size, you're given the protocol. And remember what you do with it. Thank you so much for your advice. I'm going to seriously consider this, and you go home and you open up Sustain Me, and there will be the alternate herbs that you can take. So what I'd like to do now is give you the cholesterol story. The liver is the organ that makes cholesterol, and it makes cholesterol according to the body's demands. Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, he said for the first time, normal levels of a normal vital body substance is being called a disease. Do you know our sex hormones are made from cholesterol? Do you know our vitamin D is made from cholesterol? It's a very important lipid in the human body. And there are two main types of cholesterol. One is high-density lipoprotein, HDL, and it's called the good guy because it carries excess cholesterol back to the liver. And the other one is called low-density lipoprotein, or LDL. It's called the bad guy, but the body doesn't make bad things. LDL is the repairer and the rebuilder. That's its role, that's what it does. And that's why Dr. Malcolm Kendrick said for the first time normal levels of a normal vital body substance is being called a disease. And we'll look at the normal levels in a minute, and that will surprise you. LDL does something else. It delivers cholesterol to the brain. And remember when I gave you the story of breast milk and babies, the brain loves cholesterol. Delivers cholesterol to the brain. So let me give you the name of some of the books I've got in my library. They're all listed in my book, Sustain Me, under Heart Health. The Great Cholesterol Con by Dr. Malcolm Kendrick. The Great Cholesterol Lie by Dr. Dwight Lundell, another cardiovascular surgeon. The Great Cholesterol Deception, an Australian doctor. The Great Cholesterol Myth. The Great Cholesterol Hoax. We're running out of names. And so Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, she had to come up with another name. So the title of her book is Put Your Heart in Your Mouth. And the first 3 chapters of her book, she lists all the environmental poisons that come into the body and start breaking up the endothelium cells, damaging those endothelium cells that line the arterial wall. And because of its low density, LDL, you'll find, is always on the edge. And because of its high density, HDL is in the middle. Now, who's going to plug up the holes, students? The repairer and the rebuilder. It's right there on the side, all ready to start plugging up the holes. But the person doesn't realise that that fabric softer is chemicals, that laundry detergent, those clothes they're wearing, the food they're eating, it's got chemicals on it, what they're cleaning their bathroom with, little by little, like the dripping tap on a stone, little by little, damaging the arterial wall. So what's happening? Let me give you the story of a friend of mine. He's a doctor. His name's David. He's a vegetarian. He's very fit. In fact, he plays the bagpipes. He's in his mid-60s. Goes to Europe every year and cycles 200-kilometre rides. He was getting breathless, and a friend of him who's a cardiovascular surgeon said, I want to do an angiogram on you. And what he found was that 2 of David's main arteries were 85% blocked. So this is about, what I've drawn here is about 85% blocked. So they immediately rushed him in to do a bypass. A bypass, I did assist for bypasses when I was a nurse. They saw the chest open, pull the ribs out, cut the offending artery out, cut one from here, sew that up, and then sew it into here. It's quite a major operation. I talked to him 2 weeks later. He said, "Barb, it's genetics." I said, "Genetics loads the gun, Dave. Lifestyle pulls the trigger." He said, "Well, my doctor said it's genetics." Anyway, he booked into our program. And when he booked into our program, I put my detective hat on. I wanted to know why. Why is David, who eats a plant-based diet, who exercises so much, doesn't drink coffee, no stimulants. So I put my detective hat on. I said, "Did you have a happy, healthy childhood?" He said, "Oh, it was okay." He said, "Both my parents were chain smokers." They estimate that there are 7,000 chemicals in a cigarette today. And you probably know that the passive smoke is one of the worst. What's a chain smoker? As soon as this cigarette's finished, another one's lit. So here's young David, all his childhood, he's breathing in these chemicals. And I'd like to suggest that by the age of 15, I think David's arteries were probably about 20% build up. I said, "Interesting. Anything else?" He said, "Well, there's another factor." He said, "In 2010, I wanted to put on muscle. Unfortunately, David was like many vegetarians who have cereal and toast for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for tea." What's that? That's almost 100% carbohydrate. No wonder he wanted to put on muscle, because there's not much protein in that. And so he started to eat tuna every day. After 10 months, he got mercury poisoning. What's happening in his arteries with that mercury? More damage, more damage, more damage. So what's happening in his arteries? So when he started to get breathless, and the angiogram, this is the condition of his arteries. I said, "Aha. Now we know why." Proverbs 26 verse 2 says, "The curse causeless shall not come." Old English. In other words, no problem happens without a cause. Was it genetics? No, it wasn't genetics. It was not genetics. It started with being in a home with chain smokers, and then what tipped the scale was the mercury, but something else happened. All through our blood are protein molecules. And on David's high carbohydrate diet, and yes, he did like to have sugar biscuits now and then, but he thought they were fine because they were vegetarian. When there's a lot of glucose being pumped into the blood, that glucose sticks to the protein molecules, starts to become sticky. And what happens, maybe there's a narrow area here, they dislodge and get stuck. That's the number one cause of a heart attack when it's in the heart muscle. It's the number one cause of a stroke if it's the carotid artery. Can you see it's not one thing that causes heart disease? And can you also see it's not cholesterol? To say that cholesterol is causing heart disease is like saying the fire trucks are causing the fire. Well, they're always there. When David understood this, with great joy, he stopped all his medication. Let me give you the side effects for cholesterol-lowering medication: Alzheimer's, dementia, memory loss, muscle wasting, and they've just added another one, breast cancer. Interested? If you are on cholesterol-lowering medication and you do stop, there will be a side effect. Your memory will return. Your muscles will get stronger. One lady said, but if I stop, what do I do to replace it? I said, why do you need to replace it? It's not cholesterol. One of the best things you can do for your arteries is start seriously investigating the chemicals in your home. Start with your laundry cupboard under the kitchen sink. We stayed in an Airbnb a few weeks ago, I can't remember where. And every cupboard there were just boxes of chemicals. Called fabric softener, called laundry detergent, called antiseptics, they're everywhere. I said to Jacqueline, is this what it's like in most homes? So many chemicals. Chemicals for everything. Chemicals for bugs. Chemicals for rashes. And in they come. And they all get into the blood. And little by little, like the dripping tap on a stone, they're eating away at those arterial walls. Can that be cleared? Dr. Agatha Thrash and her husband, Dr. Calvin Thrash, they started a health retreat called Uchi Pines. They're both passed now. I think if they were alive, they'd be in their hundreds. And she used to tell the story that a lady came to their retreat. She was an alcoholic. She was mid-70s. And she had 85% occlusion of her arteries. But they could not operate because the condition of her body was so weakened through 20 years of alcoholism. So her family sent her to the health retreat. So she went to Uchi Pines. First 2 days of juicing was a bit tough, but she got through it. And then on Wednesday, she started to feel good. She started to read the Bible in her room. And because her mind was now clear, she started to see the truth. And she surrendered her heart to God. And she's now looked at her body as a gift from God. And she started to be sorry for how she'd lived her life. At the end of the week, she felt so good. She hadn't felt this good since she could remember. So she said to Agatha, do I have to go? No. And so Agatha made a little place for her. She stayed there and she helped with the laundry. And I think it was the best 10 months of her life. Unfortunately, because of the damage done from many years of alcohol, she had an embolism burst in her brain and she died. Agatha did a post-mortem on her and her arteries were clear. 10 months earlier, she had 85% occlusion. You don't often, or you're not often able to get that clear. It was like this, and then 10 months later it was like this. So the good news is that can be cleared out. How do you clean it out? This lady started drinking water. She stopped all her stimulants. She started eating a plant-based diet. She started walking every day. The Sustain Me principles, they cleared out her arteries. How nice. What an incredible body we have with an inbuilt ability to heal itself. So we're going to have a look at the last thing they've done to try and reduce heart disease is lower the levels. I'm just thankful to God for the way He's taught me. Because 10 years ago, I was running a retreat in Alabama and there was a nutritionist there. She was 69. She said, I have the advantage of being in university 40 years ago. She said 40 years ago it was perfectly normal to have a cholesterol level of 300. Have I written that big enough for you? What are we told today? It has to be under 190, is that right? If you go down to 150, your brain's not going to work very well and you're not going to be able to make your sex hormones. And vitamin D isn't going to be able to be made. Remember what Dr. Malcolm Kendrick said? For the first time, normal levels of a normal vital body substance is being called a disease. And you have all of those books that I've been quoting in the Sustain Me book. I was in Maryland last year and I was speaking to a pathologist. She's retired now, she's late 70s. She said, I used to do all the testing for cholesterol. And she said, we considered 350 perfectly normal. Huh? Most people take these things from fear. No one wants to die of a heart attack. But remember what God said in 2 Timothy 1 verse 7, I have not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, love and a sound mind. What I am appealing to you tonight is your sound mind. Because you have nothing to fear. So let me tell you one story. His name's Dr. Dwayne Graveline. He's a doctor, a medical doctor, and he's an astronaut. I think he was late 40s. He went to the doctor. His cholesterol levels were 200. Doctor said, a little bit high, I want to put you on Lipitor. 6 weeks later, his wife found him in the garden. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know where he was. They stopped the Lipitor, and within 48 hours, his mind was clear again. He went back to the doctor 10 months later to have his yearly blood test. Doctor said, still a bit high. Don't want you to have a heart attack. See the fear? I want you to go back on Lipitor. He said, I'm not going to go on that. I nearly went mad on that. The doctor said, this is very rare. Why did the doctor say that? Because the pharmaceutical companies tell him that. So the doctor said, I'll put you on half dose. 6 weeks later, his wife found him out in the garden. He didn't know who she was, where he was, who he was. So, of course, they stopped immediately, and within 48 hours, his mind was clear. So he wrote his story in a medical journal. He wrote it up on a social media page, and they said, this is amazing, can we put it out there? He said, be my guest. Within hours, thousands of hits, the same thing happened to me. Because remember the side effects, Alzheimer's, memory loss, dementia, muscle wasting. And by the way, has that reduced heart disease? Lowering the levels? Not at all. Not at all. And that's why I believe God designed us to be our own doctor. And we should not make decisions on fear, but on facts. If you get my book, Sustain Me, you've got the names of all those books. Read them, search it out for yourself, and you will have that information. And then, remember, God said, I have not given you the spirit of fear, but of power. Knowledge is power. Knowledge empowers us to say, no thank you. But you're going to die? I do not believe so. And when a doctor said that to one lady, you know what she said to him? You're not God. Only God knows when. I am going to die. And we've seen many people conquer their high blood pressure, conquer what's happening in their body through natural means. The Framingham Heart Study, little town of Framingham, and they have been looking at, for about 30 years now, about 35,000 people in this little town. They set this study up to prove that cholesterol causes heart disease, but it's nearly 40 years later now, it still hasn't. But what it did prove, that people with high cholesterol levels don't get Alzheimer's. Do you need a moment's silence for that? People with high cholesterol don't get Alzheimer's because the brain needs fat. The brain needs cholesterol. Remember what Dr. Malcolm Kendrick said for the first time? Normal levels of a normal vital body substance is being caused a disease. So how can you protect your brain against Alzheimer's? Make sure you're well hydrated. The brain needs water. Make sure you're well nourished. Make sure you're going to bed early. Try and get at least 2 hours before midnight and get off the medication. You can stop blood thinning medication and cholesterol lowering medication right now with no side effects, only a plus. Only a plus. There are some medications that have to be eased off. Steroids cannot be stopped. Antidepressant medication, that cannot just be stopped. There are some medications that cannot be stopped immediately, but cholesterol can be. And so can blood thinning medication. And many are sick through ignorance. Because unfortunately, the area that you're learning now is an area of great neglect in our educational system. Isn't that true? It's a great neglect. And neglect is how our body works and how to look after it. What's also happening with Alzheimer's is malnutrition, because the brain needs and cannot function without B vitamins. Now, I do know that I'm guilty of information overload, and do you remember in our gut, those microorganisms are releasing the B vitamins? We need more fibre. Have you been counting your fibre? More fibre, more microorganisms. And the highest source of your B vitamins is found in your raw nuts and seeds. Yes, you can overdo them. That's where moderation comes in. About 8 to 10 per meal is a good amount. Chew them well. Also, our body needs minerals. Our brain needs minerals. And especially the brain needs zinc. Zinc is locked up in grain, and when you eat the sourdough bread, it releases the zinc. That culturing process releases the zinc. Our brain also needs proteins, and the best form of proteins is, again, your nuts and your seeds and your legumes. Your brain also needs fat. The fat-free diet is a dangerous diet. We need fat. And as Udo Erasmus shows, there are fats that heal, but there are fats that kill. And the killer fats are the ones that have been extracted from hard seed. And it's easy to know them in the supermarket. They're the cheapest. And they're in clear plastic bottles. Keep away from them. Your body can handle butter better than them. But unfortunately today, the butter's not that healthy because of the state of the cows. What your brain also needs is hydration. And we have found that many cases of dementia, it's because of dehydration. 8 glasses a day. And so with elderly people, the best way to encourage them to drink water is just tell them to have little bits, just little bits, a mouthful here, a mouthful there. And a lot of elderly people don't drink because they don't want to have an accident. If they drink a whole glass at once, they might have an accident. But if they have little by little by little, and the other that's absolutely essential is sleep. And we have 2 very famous people that spent the last 20 years of their life with severe dementia. One is Ronald Reagan, and the other is the British Prime Minister. What was her name, the lady? Margaret Thatcher. And both of them boasted that they only needed 5 hours sleep a night. And the last 20 years of their life showed that that was not true. Because I'd say the 5 hours wasn't 5 p.m. to 10 p.m, was it? No, it would have been about 2 a.m, from about 2 a.m. And as I'll show you when we look at sleep, and I think we're looking at sleep when we look at hormones, that it's the early hours of the night where there's a cleaning system happens. And it prevents build-up of calcified deposits in the front part of the brain. And they have found in postmortems on people with dementia, they have calcified plaques in the front part of their brain. And that is common when people don't get enough sleep. So please try for those early hours of the night. And in my book, Sustain Me, I have a whole chapter on sleep. And I address all of those things. So I'd like to look at questions now. Thank you. If the whites of the eyes are a little yellow instead of white, is it a liver problem? Yes. What can we do to get the whites of our eyes white again? In my book, Sustain Me, there's a chapter on the liver, and also in Self-Heal by Design, and there are some excellent herbs that can cleanse the liver, plus there's a liver detox, and so you'll find out in that book. For someone new to your books, which one do you recommend for people to start with? Well, Sustain Me is like a handbook on natural remedies, and in Sustain Me I start at the head, any problems with the eyes, problems with the ears, problems with the nose, and I go down the whole body. And so it's a great handbook on natural remedies, whereas Self-Heal by Design, it addresses the true cause of disease, and it looks at the true role that microorganisms play in disease. And we're going to look at that in a bit more detail when we look at cancer. So it depends what you want in the book. For intensing hiking, backpacking, lasting 8 to 10 hours, what do you recommend for fuel for the body that is also healthy? Well, because we looked at the stomach last night and how the stomach needs a rest, we need to be eating a meal that's high in fibre. And I know when I used to do a lot of hiking, you can have fresh food for the first few days, and then you can get dehydrated vegetables, and that will often work. I know oranges and apples are a bit heavy in your backpack, and bananas and pears squish. So it's your dehydrated foods can be very helpful. Beans are so easy. So you get to where you're going for the night, and you can soak your beans overnight, and you can cook them on the fire as soon as you wake up. They're a great form of protein, is your beans. And your nuts and seeds. Are seed oils dangerous? Yes! We looked at that. I've heard it's not good to use mouthwash. Is this true? Depends what the mouthwash is made out of. If the mouthwash is from doTERRA essential oils or Young Living essential oils, it'd be a great mouthwash. So it much depends on what it is made of. Oil pulling with castor oil. Only needs to pull for 2 minutes. I don't know, I think I'd rather oil pull with coconut oil. Castor oil doesn't taste that good. Does it affect the fillings in the teeth? No, it doesn't. Does it affect the silver amalgam fillings in the teeth? No, it doesn't. I have only half of my small intestine and colon, and no colon. How can I increase my nutrition and health? As I showed last night, chewing very, very well and giving breaks between the meals, very important. And also, your body will tell you what works and what doesn't work. So it's important to make a food diary and just look at the foods that sit best and the foods that do not sit best. Is green barley juice safe for people with celiac disease to continue? It is, because in the barley and in the wheat grain, there is gluten, but there's no gluten in the grass. So it's quite safe. When the detox juice is made, how long before it is consumed? Can I make it 2 days worth? It depends on what juicer you have. We have a slow crushing juicer, slow rev juicer, and it is claimed that the juice can be made 48 hours before. We don't quite make it that much before, but we make it, let's see, for Monday morning, the first 2 juices we make Sunday afternoon. It's just much easier, but that's because we've got the slow rev juicer, which slowly crushes them, and so they certainly can last longer. Skin allergies. Outside pollens be controlled solely by environment. Can different foods help? They absolutely can. And the 3 common allergen, 5, which is dairy, wheat, oats, peanuts, refined sugar. What we have found when people stop that, they don't have a pollen allergen anymore. They don't have a cat allergy anymore. And so the food has everything to do with the allergies. Protocol to deal with allergies. We just looked at that. How do I reduce calcium buildup in the arteries? We talked all about that tonight. And I'll be looking at the acid-alkaline balance when I look at cancer, and we will explain a little bit more about calcium buildup then. Do I need to worry about it? Definitely not. Do I need to do something about it? Yes, change the diet. But worry, don't. It doesn't do anything. I have leg cramps really bad. What can help? Going on the Celtic salt. The Celtic salt has 3 magnesiums. And a lot of people who aren't drinking enough water, who are on the refined salt and are having coffee, they often are lacking magnesium. And so stopping the stimulants and introducing the Celtic salt, but also taking magnesium, because magnesium is the ultimate muscle relaxant. You can also buy topical magnesium oil and rub it into the cramping areas. What brand do you recommend for Celtic salt? Well, Celtic salt is a brand. So Celtic salt or Baja salt, B-A-J-A, that's another excellent salt. I've heard there are heavy metals in a lot of the brands. Yes, there are claims, but think about this. Heavy metal, it's so heavy, it sinks to the bottom of the sea. It's not in the seawater. And Celtic salt is dried seawater, so there are no heavy metals in the salts. The heavy metals sink to the bottom of the sea, the seaweed take it up, the vacuum cleaners of the sea get it. Who are they? They're the crabs and the oysters and the prawns and the lobsters. That's where you'll get the heavy metals. I suffer with reactive hypoglycemic, so now I have protein with every meal. Any other suggestions? It's a matter of seeing what works. And often hypoglycemic is caused by a high carbohydrate diet. And remember, the 3 foods that will give lasting, steady, sure release is fibre, proteins and fats. We adopted our son in February who was diagnosed with autism. Do you have any information about what we should do for him? He's a very picky eater. Do vitamins work? No, vitamins don't work. And in the book, Stop Autism Now, was written by Dr. Bruce Fife. And he shows that a low carbohydrate diet, stopping those 5 allergen foods, can make 50% difference in autism. First 3 chapters of the book, he looks at the causes of autism, and as he investigated, he kept coming to one thing: the childhood shots. Now, of course, with this child, you can't change that. It's happened. But I would be very, very cautious to give any more. And also, you'd be surprised what children eat when they're hungry. You're always very nice, you're always very kind, but sorry, there's no more wheat, but we've got this. We've got this. So little by little, you can change the children's eating habits. You're always very kind, but you just have the food that you want them to eat. You never make a fuss, and little by little you can change them. I tend to pass out every day, especially when standing up and exerting. Is it observed as an oxygen deficiency? It may be, so make sure you're breathing through your nose. How can I increase oxygen intake? Through the nose. And also sometimes, it usually sounds like low blood pressure. Low blood pressure can be caused by not enough protein. Even if the person's having enough protein, look at how you can boost hydrochloric acid. I have Hashimoto's, thyroid, autoimmune diseases. I don't believe in autoimmune diseases. I don't believe in them because God didn't make the body to eat itself. And we have seen people totally cure from autoimmune diseases. And what do the princes tell us about autoimmune diseases? There is no cure. So what are some autoimmune diseases? Crohn's disease, we've seen people totally heal from that. Hashimoto's, we've seen people heal from that. Rheumatoid arthritis, we've seen people totally heal from that. That's why I don't believe in autoimmune diseases. There's always a cause. And once you give the body the right conditions, it will heal. How can I heal my body, get off the medication for my underactive thyroid? In my book, Sustain Me, I have a whole chapter on the thyroid. And in there you will find what you can do to heal. But I must tell you one story. It was when I was in Tanzania last year. They brought a lady to me. She's 65 and she had no thyroid. I said, what happened? She said, they cut it out 20 years ago. I said, so you're on thyroxine? She said, no. I said, didn't the doctor put you on thyroxine? She said, oh, I wasn't going to go back to him. This lady's been living for 20 years with no thyroid and no thyroxine. And what are we told? It's impossible. There she is, as large a life in front of me. Just thought I'd mention that story. Can you please share more on how to treat infant? We looked at that and we'll be looking at in... basically, infants are just little humans, so whatever works for adults works for infants. Asthma, what herbs or remedies besides mullein, pine, tips can I use to help me breathe? I want to replace my inhalers and nebulizers. There's no quick answer to that, but the answer is found in my book, Sustain Me, where I show the herbs you can use, dietary changes, and different ways of breathing. Oh, done them all. So thank you for your attention.